Hi, welcome to our second edition of the new ACT program called Tomorrow's Leaders Today. My name is Cindy Doherty, and I will be one of your hosts today.
My name's Andy Wolf. This is a series that showcases outstanding high school and college students from around Anderson Township who have already displayed outstanding leadership qualities. We want to talk with them and see how they got to this point in their lives and what they plan to do next. Today our guest is Dale Lakes, who just finished his plebe year, which to us civilians would be the freshman year. And we're going to talk with Dale today to see what we can learn about his experiences. So Dale, just to let the audience get to know you a little better, give us a brief background, a little biography of yourself.
Well, I've been a resident of Anderson Township all my life. I was born at one of the local hospitals, and I lived in Sherwood first 8 years of my life, Sherwood Forest. Then I moved to Pine Terrace, which is right off Nagel. I attended Immaculate Heart of Mary School from 1st through 8th grade.
Okay.
And that is where my project, my Eagle project, currently is at. And I attended Summit Country Day for high school for 4 years, which is around Hyde Park area. And then I'm at West Point currently, just finished my freshman year. And I have two sisters, one Margot, who's also at IHM, and Nora, who's at Summit Country Day. My father's name is Donald, mother Annette. My mother works at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and my father works at Withrow University High School. I've played many sports as a kid, and I was always outside running around, but at high school, I was a runner year-round from sophomore to senior year.
Great.
And now currently at West Point, I'm on the orienteering team, so that's my main physical activity.
Great. When did you start to think about pursuing a military academy education?
I actually started to think about West Point fairly late in the process. Many people that go to West Point have always wanted to go there since either middle school or when they started out high school, they saw either went to a West Point football game or saw one of the parades or just heard about them through someone they knew. And I personally heard about it through my dad. He applied there when he was a kid. He unfortunately didn't get in, but he told me that it's a great place. Probably is it has the best professors of any college. I'm guaranteed to be an officer, so it's guaranteed job for at least 5 years. And just all the benefits along with the type of experience that I'm used to within Boy Scouts, the senior subordinate relationships that you build,
Sure.
along with the peer leadership, something that I'm really used to, was just a great fit for me. And I went there for my first visit back in April, before my senior year, I believe, started. And I just fell in love with it. I thought it was a great place. All the cadets always seem happy. I forget who exactly it was, but one of the authors of a leadership book, he actually came and interviewed some of the cadets. He said it was like one of the happiest colleges he's been to, even though you hear all the stories about West Point.
I was going to say, when you and I talked earlier, we talked about all the horror stories you hear about the academies, and you were telling me that that's pretty much changed. So that was kind of good news. So what did you have to do? What were the qualifications you had to have in order to get into West Point?
Well, the process to get into West Point involves a congressional nomination. So I got nominated by Rob Portman, the senator. I went to his nomination, I guess you could say ceremony. And I actually didn't hear about that I got the nomination from him until later on in the process. But I knew that I got a nomination from him and Congresswoman Jean Schmidt. So I was hoping one of them would be one of the top nomination spots, which I got one. And along with that, it's SAT, ACT scores, or GPA, your leadership experiences, your sports, you have to be active. And just all those West Point looks at and sees how strong of a candidate you are based on the system they have in place. So you have to have both the typical college side of the SAT, ACT,
Sure.
along with the congressional nomination, because I believe that's the legal side of it. You have to be nominated by a current congressman.
Right. So it sounds like they are looking for well-rounded individuals.
Absolutely.
And they're really looking at leadership qualities, which kind of segues into our next topic of discussion, which was your Eagle Scout project, which is really interesting. So you've been involved in scouting for a long time.
Yeah, ever since I was 6 years old. Started off in Cub Scouts. Usually where you see all the little kids running around.
Yep.
And then I bridged over to Boy Scouts. I was in that from 11 until about 15, and then I switched over to Venture Crew, which is probably one of the lesser heard of branches of Boy Scouts.
I've never heard of that. What is that?
It's the co-ed Boy Scouts that's primarily targeted to 14 to 21-year-olds. Typically in Boy Scouts, you think about the knot tying and the camping and the patrol leaders and all that stuff, the summer camps. Venture Crew, what it really does is tries to target high schoolers and college students by promoting the high adventure activities. So going whitewater rafting, going rock climbing, doing all that fun stuff that a lot of only high schoolers and college students can handle and they would enjoy.
So you're taking males and females?
Absolutely, yes.
So how are the girls getting involved? Are they coming from scouting as well?
Well, my sister, she was in the Venture Crew that I started at IHM. She was active as well, along with a couple of her friends, and then my friends as well. I brought them over from high school. And actually just recently, I went up to Maine right when my break started after my freshman year at West Point. We went up to Maine and Niagara Falls on a Venture Crew trip to go hiking for a couple day trips.
I bet that was fun.
My dad brought up an RV, so there's just a lot of, it really depends on what I want to do, what my friends want to do. It's not so dependent on getting the awards, getting the merit badges, getting the ranks. It's a lot more lenient as far as what you're able to do.
So you're really involved in organizing the trip, coming up with the idea and planning it and making it happen.
Well, I couldn't with the trip that we went on recently, but yes, when I was president of the Venture Crew, me and my dad and my sister would sit down and figure out what trips we wanted to go on, get my friends' inputs, see what they wanted to help plan and organize.
Are any of the other Venture Crew members in your group interested in the military too? I mean, are you kind of serving as a role model in that way at all?
I don't think any of them have seriously considered. I know a couple of my friends have talked about, it'd be cool to be going to West Point because of just the overall experience, but I don't think anybody's that I personally know of are seriously pursuing that route. I know a couple of my friends from high school. I know my classmate went to Air Force Academy, and a few others at Summit currently are thinking about going to Air Force or Navy or West Point, but nobody in the Venture Crew that I know of.
Why West Point?
I think primarily because of the history behind it and how much it is known to whether it be just the Army itself. Obviously, it's got so much, it's just talked about so much. Air Force and Navy, well, they are great schools, and going to them would be just as great academically, but from the leadership side, I think West Point does provide the best leadership experience and preparation for either the civilian world, the workplace, being a leader there, or the Army itself, since West Point's the only academy that does commission Army.
Well, you mentioned, you made an interesting comment before we were talking about how being involved in the Scouts and the Eagle Scout project really had prepared you for West Point. How do you think, can you tell our audience how you think that helped you so much?
Well, with the way West Point, I guess, works among the classmates is it's not the typical college where you have the seniors doing their own things, the juniors and sophomores doing their own things, and the freshmen doing their own things. It's really everyone is working together. The seniors are your cadet lieutenants, so they're the ones in charge of companies. Companies made up of a little over 100 people. So they're the ones saying, hey, we have this to be at today, make sure you're there, and then they pass that down to the juniors who are the non-commissioned officers. So what you typically think in the Army is the sergeants, first sergeant, all that, that ranks. And their job is to work with the sophomores and freshmen, the yucks and the plebes. That's what they're called.
The yucks?
So I'll be a yuck next year.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yucks and the
Promoted
plebes.
to a yuck.
Yep.
That's great.
That's cool.
So
That's cool.
Their job is to then take that information from the lieutenant, then pass it down to us, I'll be a sophomore next year, and then at my job, I am in charge of one plebe. So what I was last year, I'm going to be in charge of
Okay.
one plebe. So the leadership structure is very similar to Boy Scouts because you got the patrol leader, which is like the junior. He's in charge of about 8 to 10 people. And then what do you consider the senior patrol leader in Scouts, who's in charge of the whole, the entire troop? That would be like your cadet lieutenant.
Right.
So it's a very similar, and obviously the leadership skills you gain from that, I've already learned a little bit through Scouts, but I still have obviously a lot to learn before I become commissioned.
Sure.
So
but I think you had said earlier too that when they're looking at qualifications, that being an Eagle Scout, being involved in scouting, is something they really look seriously
absolutely,
at in terms of leadership ability.
yes.
Which is
As,
great.
as you move up in leadership, like next year with 1 under you and 2 years from now, maybe 8 people under you, your success is also vested in their success, I suppose?
Yes, the way that works is there's military grades. So along with academic grades like your GPA, at West Point it's called the CQPA, I think is what it's called. It's your cumulative point average. I'm not sure what the Q stands for, but basically they take your military grade, which is, like you said, how well I work with those under me and above me and with my peers from a military point of view. Then you have your physical grade. So there's mandatory PE classes, like I took boxing and military movement, used to be called gymnastics. I took that my freshman year. So how well I did in that goes into my physical grade, along with the Army PT test. And then my academic grade is obviously my classes. So yeah, the military grade, that's important to be able to work well with those around you, because that's obviously what an officer's job is to do.
Exactly.
So that's how they assess you on that, I guess.
Now, just out of curiosity, if in the nominating process, Congressman Schmidt would have said, hey, look, Dale, West Point doesn't look like an option. Would you consider Annapolis or Air Force? Would you have considered that?
I would have considered Air Force. I'm not sure I would have gone to Annapolis just because I'm not too much familiar with the Navy and that side of things, but definitely Air Force because their primary focus is computers, and I'm a computer guy.
Okay.
I went to West Point, obviously, like I said earlier, because of the leadership experience, but that would have definitely been my second option had I not got into West Point. And I'm actually thinking sometime later on, there's a cross academy program where you can spend a semester at another academy.
Really?
And I'm thinking of probably doing a semester at Air Force just to
That's interesting.
take some of those classes and see what it's like to.
It's like.
Of course,
live
the
in
Air Force
Colorado.
came out of the Army. You know, it used to be the Army Air Corps, so
That's true.
probably a lot of similarities.
Definitely.
All right.
Let's talk a little bit about your Eagle Scout project, which I think is just really, really cool. Tell us a little bit about what it is and then how you made all this happen.
Okay, so the Eagle project that I completed was a outdoor classroom behind Immaculate Heart of Mary. It cost somewhere around $4,000, which wasn't the initial budget that I'd predicted. But basically what the process was is I decided that was going to be the best way for me to give back to my community was an outdoor classroom. Me and my dad are sitting around brainstorming what we could do, and Immaculate Heart of Mary was where I spent the main part of my childhood because that was where I went to elementary school for 8 years. And when it'd be a really nice day outside, I'd always want to go outside and maybe just the teacher talk or we work on something, but there's really no great place for me to do that. And I decided an outdoor classroom would be the best way I could give back to Immaculate Heart of Mary because nothing like that existed. So I worked with my troop. I worked with Vacation Bible School students. I got them to help me out a little bit because while I was building the classroom, they were also in their school, so they were in the same place. I got my neighbors, my friends, my dad. He was probably the biggest help throughout the whole process. And
Then where did the financing come from? I mean, you talked about $4,000. Where did that money come from?
the money came from the parish bulletin, actually.
Okay.
What I decided to do, along with help from my aunt, she's an art teacher, so she made a really nice picture of what the outdoor classroom is projected to look like. Oh. And we put that in the bulletin along with an ad saying, hey, I have this Eagle project. I need, obviously, the resources to be able to complete the project.
Right.
And I basically asked each parishioner, their family, or an individual to donate a bench or donate part of the deck or help with the landscaping. and they could either promise their money or their time to help me out. And I got tremendous feedback. And actually, one of the parishioners approached me personally, John Hunt, and said, "Hey, this project looks outstanding. How about I give you $2,000 or some?"
Great.
I don't know the exact number, but it was just a ridiculously generous contribution. And I said, absolutely. And we basically upgraded everything that I had planned on doing, from just being normal benches to we could now put artificial decking so it would last much longer, and we could put a roof and put a whiteboard, and just a lot of additions to make it go from just a classroom that people could use sometimes to any activity the parish could use
Yeah.
that, because it was just so many.
So I'm guessing IHM was excited about your project too.
Absolutely,
They were very
yes.
receptive
And
to
people wouldn't be
doing it.
motivated to donate if they didn't have faith in you.
Absolutely, you've got to believe that.
So did Mr. Hunt have any motivation to do this?
Yes, he'd been a parishioner at IHM for, I don't know, a very long time, and his son had been a student at Immaculate Heart of Mary as well. But unfortunately, when his son was in his upper 20s, he died in a rappelling accident. He was a big outdoor enthusiast. He always loved taking youth out to the outdoors, and those that didn't have the opportunity to go backpacking or hiking or camping, he saw that as a great way for them to escape whatever situation they might be in and just find peace in the outdoors. So my project, which Mr. Hunt worked countless hours with me on, was just a great way for him to fulfill what his son was trying to do when he was alive, working with youth, making sure they could be in the outdoors and learning about just great
Sure.
outdoors.
What a nice collaboration that
Absolutely,
worked
yes.
out to be.
And we built a great relationship, obviously, over time, and I still see him when I come back to Cincinnati, and it's
How long did this project take you from beginning to end?
from the idea to the completion took me, I think, a little over 2 years to complete. The planning phase, which was just getting all the money together, building up the plan, working with Home Depot, where I got pretty much all my materials from, and saying what's the best route to take as far as building a roof. How do I do that? Because, I mean, obviously I had minimal experience doing that. So
So is the entire outdoor classroom under roof?
no, it is.
Describe kind of what that looks like.
So there's a deck, which is a 9 by 12 foot deck
Okay.
with railings on the 3 sides, except for the front. And then on the back, there is a whiteboard where it's enclosed in piano hinge doors. So the teachers have the key. They can open it up and use it whenever they
Okay.
want to. But to protect the whiteboard, even though it has those doors, we put a roof over it just so that if it was really sunny out, the kids could still see the whiteboard. There wouldn't be like a huge glare. Just to make it last a little bit longer,
Great
keeping some of
idea.
the elements off the back.
And I think you said that you dedicated then the classroom to Mr. Hunt's
I did. I
son.
named the classroom after his son. And it's just, I actually worked with a sign making company, and they designed and helped me create. There was a sign for the donors, so I have a plaque dedicated to them, the donors, a plaque dedicated to those that helped me with the project, a plaque that just says a little bit about me, my name. It was an Eagle Scout project, and then there's a big image of Jason that I got from his foundation. Mr. Hunt actually has a foundation for Jason, and just a quote that I picked out from the website that really, I think, resembled what Jason was trying to do.
That's
So-
great. That's great.
Phenomenal.
So have you had any feedback? Well, I guess I should first ask, did they use it last year? Were they able to, or did
Yes, I
you just
think-
get finished with it?
Well, I finished it before I went off to West Point. We made the finishing
Okay.
touches the early summer, right before I left, with the signs. So I believe they used it that summer with the different parish summer programs they have, PRP, Vacation Bible School. And I've heard classes go. I don't know, my sister who's at IHM now, she's used it a couple times.
Oh,
and-
good. So you got definite feedback from. yeah.
Absolutely, yes. And they said that they love it.
I bet they do. Bet they do. That's great.
Well,
Go ahead. Randy.
I guess we're ready to talk about West Point. That's because we know how you got there now, which is pretty neat. What was the scariest thing leading into heading off to West Point?
So leading into it, I guess the scariest thing was just thinking about what my weaknesses were. Just, I guess, analyzing myself and what happens if I do this, whether it be losing things or not finishing something or just generally messing up. Because there's obviously a lot of pressure on you to be your very best. And there are people going in there who had been prior service, who had gone to the prep school for a year, who had been wanting to go there for longer than I have. And I just felt that that might be a weakness for me, not knowing enough about what I was about to go into compared to maybe some other people. And that fear never really fulfilled itself. But I was just going in there, I was thinking I might be a little bit behind because I had thought about West Point. I didn't think about going there until right before my senior year of high school, which is pretty late for many people that want to go to West Point. Mm-hmm. They want to go there since they're a kid or a little bit earlier than I did. So
Yeah.
that's probably my biggest fear.
Well, you know, in modern education, teachers are always talking about think outside the box, creative thinking, problem solving. Of course, in the military, it's teamwork, follow orders, don't disobey. Mm-hmm. How does that merge?
Well, the way it works at West Point is we're obviously not enlisted. We're training to become officers. Mm-hmm. So they teach you when you get there to follow orders, don't disobey, because you need to learn what that's like and you need to understand that while you are a cadet and you are going to become an officer, you don't really have any of that knowledge going in, and you need to understand that those around you do. So whether it be thinking you're better than someone else that is above you, and understanding how that rank structure works, that's something that really ingrained into you that your freshman year and that the summer before the school year starts, because they don't want anyone going in there thinking that, oh, I know more than this guy or I know more than my squad leader, because that just completely is going to break that.
You need to understand the chain of command
you
and
understand
respect
the chain of command, absolutely.
authority as it.
So the way that works is just understanding that your freshman year, so that there's no problems your sophomore to senior year, knowing who's in charge and what you can and can't do. But then where teamwork comes in is you're all still cadets, and you're all going to be commissioned the same rank. If someone is the first captain, so the person in charge of the entire Corps of Cadets, and someone's only a platoon leader, who's only in charge of about 36 cadets, they're still going to be commissioned as second lieutenants after the academy. So they're going to be the same rank, same pay grade, same everything. So while there is that leadership structure at West Point, everyone understands that if you're graduating that day, tomorrow you're going to be equivalent. So everyone understands how that works and knows that while they do have certain responsibilities that make them higher up, they know that in reality next year, if they're a senior, they'll be equivalent. So there's that, I guess, those conflicting but understanding.
I have a question. What has changed? You mentioned to me a little bit about how, and I guess it's all of the military academies, what has changed a little bit about the plebe year in terms of hazing and that type of activity?
Well, I'm sure anyone that's, I guess, looked up stories of West Point or whatever has seen the whole freshman hazing, which is fairly popular, I guess, at a lot of military academies and schools. But what the Army and the Armed Forces in general have been pushing for the past decade or so is an anti-hazing policy. So hazing, I guess, is defined as anything that really makes you uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So while that definition can be kind of, I guess, interpreted loosely, really it's just not doing anything that doesn't directly make you a better leader. Okay. So whether it be just, I'm sure there's countless examples I could give of just different types of hazing, but if it's not going to make you a better leader, the punishment, then it shouldn't, or make you actually learn something, it's really not beneficial to follow through on. So that's why there's been limits on how much PT you can't do, the whole drop and give me 50, because that's really not going to make you a better leader. So that's really been what the Army and all the Armed Forces have been pushing, is making sure that what cadets are doing, so the squad leader and platoon leader, make sure whatever the punishments or disciplinary actions they're giving out is going to actually make me into a better person, not just be a warrantless correction just because it'll
Kind of a teachable correction.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Do you think women being
Sounds
more
good.
involved in the military?
I mean,
has
that's
affected
definitely
that?
an aspect too. The Army's top priority is sexual harassment, sexual assault. That's always been for the past couple of years. That's pretty much every
Hear a lot about that.
briefing or every pretty much any activity. That's always the top priority, is making sure that doesn't happen. And there's really no tolerance nowadays because it just really destroys that teamwork
Sure.
foundation. Because if you can't trust someone on your left and right because you're afraid of being sexually harassed, sexually assaulted, then the unit cannot work together at all. So that's been the top priority beyond whether it be terrorism or anything beyond that. Sexual harassment's, they're always pushing that as the top priority within the Army.
It's good to know.
That is good to know. Okay, so continuing the questions about West Point, what do you think was the hardest thing you had to do physically?
I think the hardest thing physically was the ruck marches that we had the freshman year. A ruck marches basically is backpacking, but military style. So you have your full kit on, so your flick, which is where you carry like your magazines and your canteens and all of that. You have your rifle, and then you have your backpack as well. So it's not like backpacking, which I'm used to in Boy Scouts, where you just
Yeah.
have your backpack on. You have all that other stuff too, your helmet.
Which is heavy. All of it's heavy. I'm
Just in
sure.
case somebody doesn't know,
Yeah.
when you say where you have your magazines, you're not talking Field and Stream and Newsweek here, right?
For the weapon I'm carrying,
Yeah,
yes, those
okay.
magazines.
Okay, got it.
So, yeah, all that, basically carrying all that for 6 miles, 9 miles, 12 miles. The final event of Beast, which is the summer training, that's what they call it, is Beast,
Beast.
is Beast Barracks, yes. So the final event for that was the 12-mile ruck march, and that was West Point and New York in general is very hilly.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't just 12 miles flat, it was 12 miles up a hill, downhill, around a hill. So that was definitely the toughest part for me, just because while I knew I was almost done, you still had to finish that final day, and it was just pushing yourself and seeing a couple people drop out because they just couldn't get through
It's
it.
probably hot.
Oh yeah,
Is it
absolutely.
a washout kind of thing, or is it a teamwork, help a guy if he's
It's
hurting
it's
kind of
definitely
thing?
a help your buddy out,
Okay.
but it's definitely a personal thing as well.
Sure.
I walked next to someone the whole time. We were just talking, but if you get alone or someone is falling back and they don't get helped out, then that's definitely
Yeah.
Now, would that count against your yuck mentor?
no, because we don't actually. That doesn't start until the school year. The
Oh, okay.
Yuck
Okay.
Mentor during the summer Beast. It's pretty much all the freshmen.
Okay.
We're not
So,
really.
So you didn't start in September. You went the entire summer before.
Oh, yeah, I started
the
July
freshman year.
1st was when I
Okay.
started, and then I did the summer training from July 1st until the middle of August. Then I went directly into the school year, so very little break.
Now, what do you do? Do you have to go back that early this coming year?
I do. I start July 1st again for field training,
Okay.
which is more infantry style tactics. So going out in the field for 2 or 3 days at a time and setting up your own patrol base, working together with those 5 or 6 guys that are in your squad, in your team, and basically just simulating different infantry style attacks, defense.
Will that be as physically taxing as the first summer that you were there?
I mean, depends on what you're struggling on. So I'm a runner, so the endurance aspect won't be an issue. But if I have to carry a big weapon or something,
Yeah.
I'm obviously lighter, so that'll be a little bit taxing for me. But
When you did this 12-mile ruck march, what's a ruck weigh? I mean, how much were you lugging around there?
it's usually around 35 pounds.
Okay.
So not too bad, but
But if you're going
12
12
miles,
miles, yeah, then
Yeah.
it's
That's pretty good.
yeah. But then you have the weapon, which has its own weight, the helmet, the
sure.
flick you're carrying. So all that adds up.
Wow. I think you could do that, Cindy. I think you ought to try that next summer, just to.
I don't know about that, Andy, but I may pass up that opportunity. So we talked about physically. What was the hardest thing for you personally? Was it hard to be away from home for you?
That was definitely a tough part, just being used to being around your high school friends for 4 years,
Sure.
always coming home to your mom and dad and sisters. That was definitely a hard adjustment. But I think the hardest thing for me was time management, just learning how how West Point works, where you have your classes and then there's specific study times in the evenings called evening study period. So basically from 7:30 to whenever you go to bed, that's mandatory study time where you have to be either in your room, in the library, somewhere where you're actually studying, because there's so many events during the day, whether it be classes or briefings or your physical requirements. There's really not a lot of time to study on your own during the day, and West Point knows that you need to study in order to be successful. So they put that mandatory evening study period in there to make sure that cadets are studying, because academic failure is probably one of the easiest fixes at West Point. If you get a medical injury, that's obviously bad luck. That was something they might have been able to prevent. Military issues, whether it be insubordination or stuff like that, those should be preventable, but sometimes they're harder than others, just depending on personality. But academic grades, that should be one of the easiest preventable things, because as long as you're studying, as long as you're in your room actively trying, seeking help from your instructors who are basically always there from when the school day starts till the school day ends at 4. The instructors has to be at West Point. They can't just go home early if they don't have any more classes. So there's always a way for you to improve academically.
And you're pretty structured. It sounds like your schedule is pretty fixed.
Absolutely. Yes.
So you don't have much time to get into trouble.
No.
Fitting all that others, your main things. What about like cleaning up, laundry, your room, eating meals? How does that work?
So the way the laundry and the trash and all that works, those are called duties at West Point, and those fall on the freshmen. That's still the stuff where I guess if you hear stories about freshman year, that's the stuff that stays, because, I mean, the way that I look at it is you have to do it for 1 year, and then the freshmen do it for you for 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's a good trade-off.
Yeah, it's not a bad deal.
And now that I'm done, I'll get my trash, my laundry done for me.
Okay.
That's good.
For the next 3 years. So
How's the food?
it's pretty good. It's I've heard it's better than most of the academies, but obviously they have to serve 4,000 people, so it's not going to be.
It's a little bit institutional, but
Oh yeah.
doable.
But not that I complain. And there's like a mess hall council and committees and whatever that sit down with the mess hall staff and say, how can we improve the mess hall? What fixed within the budget that we can maybe have? So they just introduced optional breakfast. It used to be mandatory every morning, but now the freshmen still have mandatory breakfast. Everyone else has optional. So I can now go through the optional line and get a Starbucks coffee, one of the little glass iced coffees. I can get a naked orange juice, bagels,
That's
whatever.
nice. So you have lots to choose from.
It's like a breakfast buffet in the morning. So they added that in. I thought that was really nice because they know not everyone has a morning class. They might want to sleep in, miss breakfast. So they add that because it saves money while at the same time it's better food. So
Now, being a typical man, when you're at home, every time you walk through the kitchen, you have to open the refrigerator to see if any news in there to eat.
absolutely.
Can you do that at West Point? What's the snack situation?
Well, there's company stores. So my company, we had our own store where you could buy a Pop-Tart for 50 cents or a can of soda for 50 cents or energy drink if you had a late night studying for a couple dollars. So there's that outlet where you can buy drinks and food through your company store, which opens up after the school day is done. But during the school day, the pretty popular thing is you go through the mess hall and they have a refrigerator of milk. And sometimes they leave them. Sometimes they're locked. Sometimes they're unlocked. Oh. So you can just grab a chocolate milk on the way to class or something like that.
So snacking
that
is
works.
It's possible.
You develop some snack strategy.
And there's a hall there's like a food court that they have.
Okay.
Where you can. It's like a little. It's kind of like a gas station store, I guess you could say, where you could go in and buy some food.
Like a little
Do you get paid?
convenience.
Do
Yeah.
you get a stipend?
We get paid. Technically, we get paid $1,000, but
A day?
a lot of a
I was gonna
month.
say, wait, I'll sign up.
Oh,
So we get paid $1,000 a
Okay.
month, but most of that money goes towards the mess hall, towards your clothes, towards your books. So I personally get $250 a month, and I can pretty much spend that on whatever.
Okay.
I usually save it up for plane tickets or just going out with my friends,
Yeah.
New York City or whatever. So
those are the little things about West Point I've never heard
Mm-hmm.
before, so that's why I was curious.
So when you say go out with your friends, do you have free weekend times? Then you could travel and do whatever you want to do?
well, I guess the freedom aspect that progressively gets more each year at West Point. So your freshman year, you get what they're called as passes. So on a weekend, you have to apply for a pass, which allows you to leave West Point for that weekend. As a freshman, you get usually around 2 to 3 passes each semester. So I used, I think, 2 of them each semester. So I went on pass twice. Usually either my girlfriend came up or my family came up. We went to New York City or just did whatever. And then I also flew home for Labor Day weekend because that's a 4-day weekend. The multiple day weekend, so like if we're off Monday, that's usually when a lot of cadets will take a pass and fly home or have their family come up or go to the city because we're only like, I think 60 miles from New York City. So
That's what I was going to ask you next. 60 miles? Yeah, that's pretty close.
So it's a popular place to go.
I bet. That's neat. So academically, were you worried about that going in, and was it harder than you thought, or easier, or pretty much what you thought it would be?
I wasn't too much worried about the actual classes themselves. I was worried about the time management piece because while I think I could do well with the classes if I was at normal college. Obviously, West Point, you have a lot of other demands that you have to balance out.
Right.
So I did well. I think I did well my freshman year with academics. The studying aspect, the mandatory study periods, those were different from what I was used to high school because at high school I'd have a couple hours off during the day. I could crank out most of my homework so I could free up my evenings, or I'd only spend maybe 1-2 hours at my desk and then split my time with Facebook or whatever, just distractions. But you have to definitely structure out your time a lot more.
Well, do you have to declare a major like in a regular four-year college?
Yes. Well, that actually happened this year. Second semester sophomore year is when you declare your major. West Point it's weird. They're like a liberal arts engineering school mix. So I have to take mandatory engineering classes, I think about 2 or 3 my junior year. You choose an engineering track.
Okay.
But then you also have your core classes your freshman year and the first half of your sophomore year.
So that's pretty set.
Everybody
takes
really
the same classes.
The only choices you get freshman year in classes if you want to validate a class. So if you want to go to a harder math because you take a validation test and get out of your freshman math, or I validated U.S. history because I took AP U.S. history in high school.
Good man.
So I got to validate that class. So, but beyond that, it's really they have that schedule. They give it to you. That's basically they give you your
do it.
schedule.
Yep.
So
Interesting.
Academically, foreign language. What's the emphasis on that nowadays? I mean, are they offering like Arabic or Farsi or?
yeah,
like
they
that?
have. I think there's 7 or 8 languages at West Point you can choose from: Portuguese, Portuguese, Spanish, French, Arabic, Chinese, Persian, and I think there's 1 or 2 more. But I'm choosing French. I start taking that this upcoming school year. For my whole sophomore year, I'll be taking French. And there's a big emphasis in the Army on Chinese, Arabic, Persian, and Russian because those are obviously areas we have interest in,
Right.
where a lot of the conflict is happening. So there's a test that you take that I took last summer, a language test that basically measured your capability to learn a new language. And if you scored well on that, you're most likely going to get put in a language that is Chinese, Russian, Arabic, because those are typically harder languages.
They would place you there.
So they
choose for
definitely
you.
look for those kind of folks.
Yeah, the people that have taken a language before have demonstrated they do well in it, and maybe they want to take a different language, but if they choose like Portuguese, which is typically seen as one of the easier languages, they'll say, while you can take Portuguese, you have done really well in Japanese, and we think you do well in something else because Japanese is a harder language, and you scored well on that test. So the Army has certain slots to fill, saying that there have to be 60 cadets to take Chinese because that's the need we have in the Army.
Sure.
So they have to fill those slots. And usually they get filled on their own. Usually cadets request them that they get filled up on their own, but if they need to fill 5 or 6 slots here, they'll say that you have to take this language. So.
Now, if you were going to go into, let's say, military intelligence, would you have a leg up if you were in one of those languages? you think?
Absolutely, I think you would.
Now, do you study abroad? Do you have that opportunity?
Definitely. They're called AIADs, so academic. The AID is academic. There's an MIAD, which is military. So
Okay.
like a military school, if I went to like French paratrooper school or Australian jump school, something like that, that's a MIAD. But an AIAD is an academic experience. So I know a couple people in my company went to Jordan and studied there for, they studied Arabic and international relations. So there's different opportunities like that where you can go internationally and study either at another military academy in like France or Austria or somewhere like that, or basically within your department, wherever you're majoring in, they have certain academic opportunities that they offer and that you can apply for.
Would you think you would do that?
I consider it. I'm not too sure what what they're offering in computer science, which is what I want to major in. I'd have to see what the different opportunities they have, but I'd definitely consider it.
Is that a third year or fourth year kind of thing, or how's it?
Yeah, it's a third year, mainly third year. Fourth year, you're graduating, so you're trying to focus on completing all your requirements. And
Does the third year have a cool name too, like plebe or yuck?
Cal.
Cal?
Cal?
Yeah, the story behind that I've heard, I actually didn't know the story until very recently, is back in the day, you used to not be able to go on breaks until your junior year. That was like your first time you were able to go home. I believe it was for Christmas break. So what General MacArthur, or one of the superintendents, described is, it looks like they're all about like cows going out to pasture when they first leave, because just like a herd of juniors just leaving, going to
That's
their
funny.
cars and
Good old General MacArthur.
Going to the train
He's a funny
station.
guy.
Cows. So you go from plebes to yucks to cows. Is there
and then firsties is
Got to ask, is there a senior
yeah,
neck?
they're called firsties.
seniors or firsties?
Like first
Okay.
lieutenant?
Yes. Well,
Or
something
soon
like
to
that.
be?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's
Are
funny.
there secrets that if you told us, we
You'd have to
wouldn't
kill us?
Yeah, we wouldn't
no,
leave this room
not that I
alive.
know of.
Okay, good. I feel better.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking before about penalties that should only enhance your abilities. What are some of the things you get penalties for? Like either serious stuff or just goofy stuff?
Anything from being out past taps. So every night at 11:30, a cadet in your company will go around for taps check, which basically means you're in your room, either asleep or just staying in your room, not making any noise, because that's like the mandatory time. So if they do taps check and you're not there, you'll get something called hours. Hours is the main form of punishment at West Point, which basically means in central area, which is a big open area that all the barracks surround, or some of the barracks surround. You're in dress uniform, so the uniform you typically think of when you see cadets in like parades. You wear that along with your rifle, and you basically just walk back and forth in the central area for how many hours they give you. So,
Seen that in movies.
so for example, if you get caught drinking off post and you're underage or something like that, then I know someone that got 99 hours for that.
Ooh.
So they had to do that
Whoa.
most weeks. So if like on a weekend you can maybe crank out like 10 hours. So
So
if
you
you're
can,
like,
you can do it in blocks of time. You don't have to be out there.
yeah,
There's probably
straight.
some
That would be a little
40-year-old
bit, yeah.
soldiers still doing their hours.
Yeah, there's
Do,
things called
do they
like-
make you peel potatoes or anything like in the old days, like KP duty or anything?
No, I mean in the mess hall, the freshmen have certain duties. So the condiments, all the seals have to be broken off. They have to set the table.
Okay.
Tell the firstie at the end of the table, who's the table commandant, tell him what the meal is. If he asks how many days there are until he graduates, you have to know how many days there are until he graduates. Stuff like that.
Like no more of the push-ups in the mud like in that Officer and a Gentleman movie?
No.
Exactly, I
Well, I'm
remember
sure we've done push-ups in the mud, but that was just it coincidentally rained and we had PT that morning. So,
All right.
but yeah.
Man, you're just full of all kind of neat information.
I didn't know any of this
I think we're going to go
West
beyond our
Point.
30-minute limit.
I think we are, too.
We may have to start paying rent here.
So is there anything that you can think of that really surprised you about West Point?
I think what really surprised me was how happy the cadets are. I mean, obviously the stories that you've heard and I've heard before I went make it seem like everyone's just trying to get through because
Yeah, they're
it's just-
miserable. That's exactly how I
it's just
pictured it.
miserable. But I think it is one of the happiest places, happiest colleges, at least in my opinion. I never really see. Every now and then you'll see somebody who just looks downright just miserable, but for the most part, everyone's pretty happy. Just either cynically or really they are happy.
Good point,
Just
good point.
depends. But yeah, because everyone's doing the exact same thing. Everyone's taking the same classes for the most part. Everyone's got the same requirements to fulfill. So it's a shared experience. And you know that you can rely on your buddy to help you if you need it.
Did you feel supported both by your fellow plebes and by the staff there?
Absolutely. And what's great about West Point is once you're done with your freshman year, The Army fraternization, which I'm sure is an issue, it's always been an issue, is the privates becoming friends with the sergeants and all that. Making sure that that rank structure is in place outside of just the normal duty day. But with the way West Point works is once you become a sophomore, you're allowed to be friends with the juniors and seniors. So the relationships I build from a plebe to either Yuck or Cal standpoint, I couldn't be friends with them, but I could still like have that relationship where he's letting me know what's going on, helping me out. Now that I'm a sophomore, I'm able to become friends with him and maybe hang out with him on the weekends. People that I met that I couldn't be friends with now, I'm able to. So, yeah, it's definitely a shared experience. And along with my team, I'm on the orienteering team at West Point. It's a club team. I get to hang out with them all the time. I eat dinner with them most nights because we have our
You might need to
team
explain
table.
orienteering for people who don't know what that
Probably,
is.
yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So I ran year-round in high school, and I was thinking of joining the Army cross-country team and track team at West Point. But the more I thought about it, the big thing at West Point as well is if you are on an NCAA team, it takes up a good 3 to 4 hours of your day. And with what I wanted to accomplish at West Point, academically, physically, militarily, I just didn't think I'd have enough time in the day to be on an NCAA team. So I looked for other activities that I could pursue that would still allow me to run year-round, and I decided to try out for orienteering. Basically what it is cross-country in the woods. So if you ever saw the movie Last Mohicans, where Daniel Day-Lewis is running through the woods,
Absolutely.
we basically do that, except you're trying to find points in the woods. So you get the map at the start of the race, and you say, all right, I have to get to this spot. I know I'm here. How do I use the terrain to figure out how to get there?
You have a compass too?
We do have a compass and a map. So
That's about it, right?
yeah, so you just basically use those things, and you got to find those points, and they'll give you a small hint, like it's in a ditch, or it's on the top of the hill, or
What marks the point when you find it?
there's a dot, or well, when you find the point, there's a orange and yellow bag that's hanging from, either it's on a stake or it's hanging from a tree or something like that.
Okay. Do you
And-
collect the bag or do you?
No, it's all electronic now. So basically what it is there's electronic, it's called an e-punch, and basically you have a e-punch, it's called an e-punch on your hand, and you basically put that in the e-punch receiver, and it sends a signal back saying what time you were there, what point it is, were you right or wrong, did you think it was something else?
So is this a timed thing?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
time.
Okay.
So there's different levels of courses. So orange is like the most basic, which I started out on. Then you move up to green, to brown, to red, and to blue. So there's a certain, like, at least the way West Point does it is once you can run 10 minutes per kilometer, which sounds easier than it is.
Doesn't sound easy.
Yeah, well, if you
Depends on the terrain. doesn't
compared to
Yeah.
like cross country times, it sounds like a piece of cake, but you're in the woods. So
Yeah. So do you compete against other schools?
yeah,
Is that-
well, it is a club team, so we compete against other NCAA teams.
Okay.
There's not very many NCAA teams that have orienteering because obviously it's not well known, but it's mainly a European thing. So we actually sent, I think, about 8 orienteers from West Point to Europe to compete in the international orienteering meet. So if I
That's
get
neat.
good enough, I guess
hope
I
you
could do that. That'd
That
really
would be
fun.
fun, yeah.
So there's a national national orienteering meet, and West Point's won that for the past decade or so. So
Had you learned to use a compass in Boy Scouts?
yes, I did, and that definitely
Yeah.
Helped me with that.
Your normal young person doesn't ever see one. They,
Yeah.
they maybe couldn't even identify it anymore. If you were an elementary school teacher, would you teach your kids to do it, knowing what a cool thing it is?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's helpful whether you're hiking with your family and if you get
Yeah,
lost
right.
or just knowing where to go.
The original GPS.
I
Exactly.
mean, now you can get an app on your phone or whatever, but
Yeah.
so.
Oh, that's neat.
That is neat. We've talked about now West Point for a good while now. What do you think is in store for you next year? What will next year be like as a Yuck?
So next year as a Yuck, my primary responsibility from a military point of view is being in charge of a plebe. So I was a plebe last year.
One
and
plebe. You get
just
one plebe. Okay.
Yes, so my job will be making sure that he fits in well with, basically adjusts well to the academics. He is doing well in the company, because we'll both be in the same company, making sure that he or she is just doing a good job. And I answer any questions he has. I sit down and if he has something coming up, make sure that he's ready.
So you're kind of a mentor, a
Yeah.
go-to guy for questions.
And I mean, it is pretty much it is a mentor relationship. That's how I would describe it.
What percentage would you guess are females these days?
I think about 10 to 15, somewhere in there. It's rising, I think. It was 10 a couple years ago. I think they're trying to get it closer to 15, so it's definitely adjusting a little bit, I guess.
How do you feel about that? You think they fit in well and
Yeah, they definitely do.
no big deal?
I mean, obviously it's different because physically and I guess just expectations. There's always been a history in the Army, or just in the armed forces in general, of the men always doing all the super
Sure.
crazy infantry stuff. But I mean, the women definitely are just as capable, just as willing, just as gung-ho, I guess, to complete whatever West Point tells them to do. So I definitely think that they bring a different perspective to
Good answer.
West Point.
Good answer.
We did have here in Anderson Township a young lady a few years ago who went to West Point, and then, I guess quite a few years ago, she actually went back there as an instructor, as a chemistry or physics teacher or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of cool. Small world.
So you found that, I'm sure, helpful as a plebe? You had someone that you were assigned to that helped you throughout the year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good. That's a good plan. Good.
What do you see beyond West Point?
Well, it's obviously a fairly long ways away, but
Yeah.
what I'm looking into now is there are certain branches that the Army has. So infantry is probably the most well-known branch, aviation, armor. What I'm personally looking into is either military intelligence, so working with intelligence units. I'm a big computer guy, so trying to, I guess, get into enemy systems, see what is going on, or protecting our own systems, making sure communications are secure. But the Army is actually creating a new branch called cyber. My sponsor, who is a current officer, I'm able to go over to his house on the weekend sometimes. Basically, we have a good relationship where if I ever need to get off West Point for some reason, he's within a 5-mile radius that I'm allowed to be in, and if I ever need someone to talk to, just a
that's
resource, that's really
Yeah,
nice.
that's-
And he's pretty active in the cyber development. So I've talked to him a little bit, and that's definitely something I want to join if that branch is available when I graduate. I'm not sure the timeline has been kept
Yeah.
pretty under wraps just because I'm personally not too sure what the timeline is. But if that is a branch when I do graduate, I definitely like to go into that because just securing American defense systems, both civilian and military, is something I think is pretty important.
So do you see yourself making a career out of the military? Or you're not sure about that yet?
I'm not too sure yet. No. Obviously, the military has a lot of opportunity in that field, but the civilian sector does as well. So it really just depends on what I think I want to do and whether there is a opportunity in the military to do that. If there is, I'd definitely love to be a career military. But if there isn't, and I want to pursue something else, then after the 5 years that they require, I'd go
Well,
civilian.
you'll be well prepared, well trained, I think. Sounds like
Absolutely.
it. That's
Yeah,
great.
this has been absolutely fascinating. I know I will sleep better
I-
tonight knowing
well-
that guys like you are out there protecting me. And if you ever read
Absolutely.
any of my emails in the future, say hi.
Well, I learned just tons about West Point. I had no idea. Plebes, yucks, cows. That was one thing I learned. I never heard that before. You have just done a lot in your young life, Dale, and it's all good. And of course, we wish you the best of luck in your next endeavor. But
you.
it's been an eye opener for me.
Yeah, me too. It's absolutely fascinating, and young guys like you that are motivated to do this speaks well of your family, your church, your neighborhood.
Absolutely.
So, to the audience out there, we'd like to thank Dale Lakes for coming in. It's been a phenomenal, almost an hour now. So, thank you very much.
Absolutely. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. Please join us again for our next edition of Tomorrow's Leaders Today.